Welcome back to our channel on this beautiful, bright day. We have some truly explosive and heartbreaking developments to unpack in Genoa City today, so grab a seat and brace yourselves for the emotional turbulence ahead. The Newman family is certainly no stranger to catastrophic warfare, but the most lethal threats are rarely the ones pounding on the front gates. Sometimes, the most terrifying enemies are the insidious poisons creeping through their own veins. For weeks, we have watched the slow, agonizing deterioration of Nick Newman, a man who has always stood as a pillar of strength, morality, and resilience in a town plagued by corruption. Yet, beneath his rugged exterior, a dark and deadly secret has been systematically destroying his central nervous system. The lethal grip of fentanyl, originally forced upon him by the sadistic machinations of Matt Clark during that horrifying Las Vegas ordeal, has mutated into a full-blown, life-threatening addiction. The sheer psychological weight of this secret has been crushing Nick from the inside out, isolating him from the very people who would move heaven and earth to save him. As the tension reaches an absolute boiling point, the facade of control that Nick has so desperately maintained is about to shatter in the most spectacular and devastating fashion imaginable. The Newman Empire is built on power and invulnerability, but biology and addiction do not care about a billionaire's bank account or a prestigious family name. The atmosphere inside the strategy meeting is thick enough to cut with a knife. The room is filled with the heavy hitters and the deeply traumatized victims of Matt Clark's reign of terror. Victor Newman sits at the head of the heavy mahogany table, his piercing gaze scanning the room, calculating every possible angle to neutralize the threat that Matt poses to his legacy. Sharon Newman is there, her posture rigid, her eyes reflecting the deep, historical trauma she has endured at the hands of the very monster they are plotting to destroy. Sienna Bacall, carrying her own heavy burden of guilt and survival from the desert, is woven into this tense alliance. Noah Newman watches his father with a mixture of desperate hope and lingering fear. They are gathered to formulate a master plan, a definitive strike against the man who has turned their lives into a waking nightmare. But the true nightmare is not lurking in the shadows of Genoa City, it is sitting right there at the table with them. Nick is physically present, but his mind and body are fighting a losing battle against the severe chemical dependency ravaging his system. If you look closely at Nick during this high-stakes meeting, the signs of his impending physical collapse are glaringly obvious, painting a tragic portrait of a man on the absolute brink of destruction. His skin is uncharacteristically pale, slick with a cold, clammy sweat that he repeatedly tries to wipe away unnoticed. His hands tremble with a violent, uncontrollable kinetic energy, betraying the severe neurological distress caused by the opioid withdrawal and the subsequent desperate dosing. His eyes, usually so warm and fiercely protective, are glassy and unfocused, darting around the room as he struggles to track the rapid-fire strategic conversation happening around him. He is suffocating in plain sight, drowning in a toxic sea of fentanyl while nodding along to Victor's ruthless directives. The sheer physical exertion required just to remain upright in that chair is monumental. Nick is fighting a war on two fronts, the external battle against Matt Clark and the internal massacre occurring within his own bloodstream. Every second that ticks by is a countdown to a biological catastrophe, and the tragic irony is that his family is too focused on the external monster to see the internal demon devouring him alive. The tension in the room continues to escalate as the details of their counterattack against Matt Clark are fiercely debated. The air feels heavy. It feels suffocating. Nick suddenly stands up. He excuses himself. He steps away from the heavy table. He needs air. He needs space. He pulls out his phone. His fingers shake violently against the screen. He dials a number. He lifts the device to his ear. His breathing is shallow. His chest heaves. The room falls into a muted background hum. He tries to speak. The words fail him. His vision blurs into a chaotic swirl of colors. The phone slips from his trembling grip. It clatters against the hardwood floor. He sways. His knees buckle. The room spins out of control. Gravity takes over. He falls. He hits the ground. Hard. The impact is sickening. Silence shatters. Chaos erupts. And this is the moment I almost screamed at the screen. Seeing a titan like Nick Newman, a man who has survived plane crashes, building collapses, and the most brutal physical beatings, just suddenly drop like a stone is absolutely chilling. There is no heroic final stand, no dramatic speech, just the brutal and forgiving reality of a body completely shutting down under the lethal strain of severe drug abuse. His collapse is sudden, violent, and utterly terrifying. He lies motionless on the floor, his large frame entirely unresponsive, stripped of all its inherent power and vitality. The visual of Nick Newman, the golden boy of the Newman dynasty, lying unconscious in a heap, is a stark, horrifying testament to the devastating reality of the opioid epidemic. It does not discriminate. It does not care about your wealth, your family, or your history of heroism. When the body has had enough, it simply turns the lights off, leaving the loved ones behind to navigate the terrifying darkness. The immediate aftermath of Nick's collapse is a masterclass in sheer, unadulterated panic. Sharon's reaction is instantaneous and visceral, a primal scream tearing from her throat as she witnesses the father of her children fall. She drops everything, scrambling across the room with a desperate, frantic energy, sliding to her knees beside his motionless body. Her hands flutter over his face, his chest, searching frantically for a pulse, for any sign of life. The historical trauma Sharon carries, the memories of losing Cassie, the endless battles with Cameron Kirsten, the psychological torture from Matt Clark, all of it compounds in this singular, horrifying moment. She is looking at the man she has loved, lost, and loved again, and she is watching him slip away right in front of her eyes. Her voice cracks as she screams his name, begging him to wake up, her tears falling freely onto his pale face. It is a scene of profound heartbreak, showcasing the deep, unbreakable bond between Nick and Sharon, a bond that is now being tested by the cruelest of medical emergencies. The shockwaves of Nick's collapse ripple violently through the rest of the room. Victor Newman, the stoic, unshakable patriarch who has spent his entire life projecting an aura of absolute invincibility, is momentarily frozen in sheer horror. To see his son, his strong, capable son, reduced to an unresponsive shell shatters the billionaire's impenetrable armor. Victor's booming voice fills the room, barking urgent, desperate orders for medical assistance, his usual calculated demeanor replaced by the raw and filtered terror of a father about to lose his child. Noah Newman, who has already endured so much psychological turmoil regarding his family's dark legacy and his complicated relationship with Sienna, is paralyzed by the sight of his father on the floor. The trauma of watching the strongest man he knows succumb to a hidden weakness is a psychological blow that will undoubtedly leave deep, lasting scars. The strategy meeting, once focused on hunting down a monster, has instantly transformed into a frantic, life-or-death battle to save a man from himself. The tragic reality of this medical crisis is deeply rooted in the insidious nature of the fentanyl that Matt Clark introduced into Nick's life. This is not a simple case of exhaustion or stress. This is the culmination of a severe and treated chemical dependency. Nick has been playing a lethal game of Russian roulette with his own biology, relying on dangerous street drugs to manage the physical and psychological agony of his trauma. The fentanyl has rewired his brain, hijacked his nervous system, and systematically eroded his physical health to the point of total systemic failure. The sheer toxicity of the drugs coursing through his veins has finally overwhelmed his heart and brain, triggering this catastrophic collapse. The fact that Nick, a man with infinite resources at his disposal, felt so isolated and ashamed of his addiction that he hid it until his body literally gave out, speaks volumes about the insidious, isolating power of substance abuse. It is a heartbreaking narrative arc that highlights the desperate need for professional rehabilitation and the deadly consequences of denial. Yet, as if the universe has decided to test the Newman family's endurance to its absolute breaking point, Nick is not the only one facing a severe, debilitating medical crisis. Across town, at the elegant Genoa City Athletic Club, another pillar of the Newman dynasty is quietly crumbling under the weight of excruciating physical agony. Nikki Newman, the matriarch who has fought so hard to maintain her grace, her sobriety, and her family's unity, is enduring a private hell of her own. While her husband and children are caught in the chaotic crossfire of Nick's collapse, Nikki is battling a series of persistent, blinding headaches that are threatening to tear her world apart. The contrast between the violent, public collapse of her son and the quiet, agonizing deterioration of the mother is a masterful stroke of dramatic storytelling, painting a picture of a family under siege from all sides. The pain Nikki is experiencing is not a simple migraine, it is a debilitating, all-consuming agony that radiates through her skull, leaving her dizzy, nauseous, and profoundly disoriented. We see her at a table in the GCC, her perfectly manicured hands pressed desperately against her temples, her eyes squeezed shut in a futile attempt to block out the blinding pain. The elegant, composed woman who commands boardrooms and charity galas is reduced to a trembling, vulnerable state, struggling to even formulate a coherent sentence. The sheer intensity of these headaches is terrifying, completely hijacking her cognitive functions and leaving her feeling helpless and isolated in a crowded room. Every sudden noise, every bright light acts as a physical blow to her fragile state, amplifying the torture and deepening her sense of dread. It is a visceral, deeply unsettling portrayal of chronic pain, and it raises terrifying questions about the underlying medical cause of this sudden, severe affliction. Victoria Newman, who happens to be with her mother at the club, is forced to witness this horrifying deterioration firsthand. Victoria is used to seeing her mother as a beacon of strength, a survivor who has overcome multiple sclerosis, alcoholism, and the endless drama of being married to Victor Newman. But seeing Nikki so profoundly disoriented and consumed by pain strikes a chord of deep, primal fear in Victoria's heart. She watches as her mother struggles to maintain her balance, her words slurring slightly as the pain overwhelms her senses. Victoria's mind immediately races to the darkest possible conclusions. Is this a symptom of something far more sinister, a tumor, a neurological degenerative disease? The sheer uncertainty of the situation is paralyzing. Victoria desperately tries to comfort her mother, her voice laced with a frantic, protective urgency. But she knows that soothing words are not enough to combat the terrifying reality of Nikki's physical decline. Beyond the immediate fear of a fatal medical diagnosis, there is a much darker, psychological shadow looming over Nikki's health crisis. Nikki Newman is a recovering alcoholic, a woman who has spent decades fighting a brutal, daily battle against the temptation to numb her pain with vodka. Chronic, excruciating physical pain is one of the most dangerous triggers for relapse, and the sheer agony Nikki is enduring right now is pushing her dangerously close to the edge of the abyss. The psychological temptation to just make the pain stop, to pour a drink and let the warm, numbing embrace of alcohol wash away the blinding headaches, must be overwhelmingly powerful. Victoria knows this history all too well. She is acutely aware that if her mother cannot find medical relief soon, the sheer desperation of her suffering might drive her right back into the destructive cycle of addiction. The stakes for Nikki's sobriety have never been higher, adding a layer of intense emotional jeopardy to an already terrifying medical mystery. The simultaneous medical crises of Nick and Nikki Newman represent a profound, structural fracturing of Genoa City's most powerful dynasty. Victor Newman can buy companies, destroy rivals, and manipulate the global markets, but he is completely powerless against the biological vulnerabilities of the people he loves most. His son is lying unconscious on the floor, his body ravaged by lethal narcotics, while his wife is suffering through blinding, disorienting agony that threatens to shatter her hard-won sobriety. The Newman empire is under siege, not from corporate raiders or vengeful ex-lovers, but from the fragile, unpredictable nature of the human body. The emotional toll this will take on the entire family is incalculable. They are a family that prides itself on control, yet they are currently spiraling into a chaotic abyss of medical uncertainty and potential tragedy. The walls are closing in, and the very foundation of the Newman legacy is cracking under the immense pressure of these dual crises. As the paramedics rush to Nick's side, and Victoria desperately tries to find help for her agonizingly disoriented mother, the audience is left breathless, caught in the devastating emotional crossfire of this iconic family's darkest hour. The writers have masterfully woven these two separate physical breakdowns into a cohesive narrative of vulnerability and existential threat. We are forced to watch as the invincible Newmans are brought to their knees, their wealth and power rendered utterly useless in the face of addiction and illness. The psychological warfare orchestrated by Matt Clark has manifested into real, tangible physical destruction, and the fallout will undoubtedly alter the landscape of Genoa City forever. The sheer terror in Sharon's eyes, the blinding pain etched across Nikki's face, the desperate panic radiating from Victor and Victoria. It is a symphony of tragedy that demands our absolute attention. Will Nick survive this lethal overdose, or has the fentanyl finally claimed its ultimate victory? Will Nikki's excruciating pain lead to a devastating medical diagnosis, or will it drive her back into the dark and forgiving embrace of alcoholism? And the most pressing question of all, how can the Newman family possibly survive a war when their most vital soldiers are falling from within?